What's up everyone, China Cycling here. Something a little bit different today. Today I got to talk with the founder or the co-founder of SERK Bicycles, Shannon. So SERK Bicycles, like the one I'm riding, they're a Chinese titanium brand, but the founder, he's from Australia, so I guess it's like a half Chinese, half Australian brand, but super cool titanium bikes. I think you've seen them on the channel a few times. Like, you know, this is the bike I've been running for a year now, and the bike that I originally used to test the L2 group set on. I love the bikes, but I thought I'd let you guys learn more about the brand. I sat down with Shannon for a chat about the brand. We talked about the beginnings of the brand, his experience in China. He's been in China for absolutely ages. He's trained as an architect, so it's interesting to hear how he blends his training with his love for bikes to make the bikes. We talked a bit about why titanium, why not carbon, all that stuff. Really interesting chat. Anyway, either put it on in the background and just listen to it as a podcast, or just watch and listen as you're getting stuff done. But yeah, just thinking today, a bit of a chill video while I just take a bit of a break from all the Black Friday stuff and just go to grab some coffee for the team. So yeah, check it out.
I'm Shannon Bufton. I'm the co-founder of SERK Cycling, and we've been around for, I haven't counted the years for a while, but I think it's over 10 years. And we're based here in Beijing in China, right here in the center of the city. And yeah, we make great titanium bikes, and we also do what we call frontier cycling trips around Asia. In terms of our product line, it's all titanium, first of all, and we have 3 models in our range. We have the A10, which is the pure rim brake road bike. It's got a pretty fast geometry, clearance for up to 30C tires. Then we have the A30, which is our kind of all-road bike, which it's a disc brake bike, and it brings the tire clearance up to 35 millimeters. And then we have our full-on gravel bike, the A21, which has tire clearance for up to 700 by 45 in 700C and up to 55 in 650B. So that's the 3 bikes that we have in our range. I mean, in terms of where titanium sits in the market, it's obviously a niche material and boutique, but I think more and more people are becoming interested in it because the number one thing is its longevity. So a titanium bike is going to last a lot longer than aluminium, a lot longer than carbon, and also a lot longer than steel because it doesn't rust. And it's also stronger. So a lot of our clients are experienced cyclists, and this might be the 3rd or 4th bike that they've bought. And the first experiences riding lightweight carbon bikes were lots of fun, but it's not that much fun when you crash or when you pull your bike out of the bag after an airline flight and find it's got a cracked rear stay or something like that. So, these days I think weight is important for those people who are racing, but if you're not racing, weight is not that critical. And so the benefits of titanium being stronger, but still lightweight, and also the vibration dampening effects that titanium have outweigh the little weight penalty that you have having a titanium frame over carbon. So I guess in summary, it's more the kind of more the connoisseurs who are interested in titanium, who've ridden it all and are looking for the kind of ultimate frame material that covers all the bases. Before we started making our own titanium bikes, we were a bike shop for many, many years, and we're also the distributor in China for Swift Carbon. And at that stage, I was doing a lot of high-level racing around Asia, so I was a big kind of weight weenies guy, measuring every single gram on my bike, making it as light as possible because I also love to climb. And then I decided I wanted to go and do a bike packing adventure in far western China back in 2014. And at that stage, gravel bikes were just starting to come out in other parts of the world, and there were 0 gravel bikes here in China. So I went to our friends who run a titanium factory and I said, I want a gravel bike, gave them a design, and they built it. So I started with titanium just because it was a material that is well made here in China, and I had access to a factory to get one. But then I did, I think, 8 days in remote Sichuan bikepacking on titanium, and I'm like, you know what, this is pretty good. Before, I always saw all the old guys, 40 plus guys riding around on titanium, and I was like a racer boy then, and I'm like, well, why would anyone ride titanium? It looks cool, but I don't get it. But after 7 days riding on gravel on it, I went, wow, I can really appreciate the wonder of this material. So it was really comfortable. A couple of times during our journey, we had unexpected things happen. I had to chuck the bike in the back of a truck for like 50 Ks one day over really rough roads, and I wasn't worried about the bike getting broken. And then when I brought it back here to the shop, I polished it all up again and it was back to looking new. So that journey was the one that got me hooked on titanium. And I hear that from a lot of people. It's like, it's not until you ride titanium that you really can appreciate its value and understand why other people are getting into it. So after riding that initial titanium gravel bike, we decided that titanium was a material that we really wanted to explore. And here in China, there's a lot of good titanium factories. Some of them that have been around for over 30 years and have been manufacturing for some of the bigger brands, titanium brands in the West for quite some time. And before that, they were even working in aeronautical industry. So there's quite a titanium industry here in China. So I knew that we could get a really good quality titanium bike out of Chinese factories. So we went about designing our first real road bike, because back then I was still racing and I wanted a sub 7 kilogram titanium race bike. So we did our first rim brake bike. And in the testing process, we built a couple of different prototypes with different thickness tubing and different geometries to then go out and ride it and then see what really worked best for us. But it didn't actually take that many iterations to get it pretty nailed, because titanium, the factory has a lot of experience, and titanium with the right thicknesses, wall thicknesses, is a really beautiful ride. So we do offer custom geometry, but the wait time is a little bit long. I mean, for China it's long. It's 6 months to get custom geometry. And generally most of the bikes we sell are our standard geometries, because most people can fit on a standard size bike with a different length stem and a different tweaking system. So we as a brand are at this stage trying to be more value for money. So we encourage people to take a standard size because it's easier to produce, and we always have them in stock, and so we can have a fast turnaround. And one of the things that we do that's a little bit different is all of our customers, we ask them to send us a picture of their existing bike, and the length of the stem, number of spaces under the stem, position of the seat, and then we'll draw it up in BikeCAD and we'll compare the geometry of the SERK to their existing bike and make sure that the touch points are exactly the same. Or if there are compromises, we'll look at them between the sizes, and if there are a lot of compromises, then we'll say, okay, we'll suggest that you go down the custom route. So we actually spend a lot of time with our customers getting the fit right. And we also offer a guarantee that if we send you the wrong size frame, you can send it back and we'll replace it with whatever size that you think is better for you. So custom is good, but if you spend the time to set up a bike properly, most of the standard sizes can fit most standard people. And you only really need custom if you've got some different proportions to the standard population. Or if you want, a particular look, you don't want any spaces under your stem, or you want a little bit more aggressive front end or a little bit longer chainstays, we can accommodate those things. But we spend a lot of time on our geometry design to make it pretty dialed. So we're very happy with how our standard geometry is, and that's our kind of signature SERK feel. So most people go for the standard builds. When it comes to other types of customization, we spend a lot of time on the customization of paint. We have an excellent partner here in China, Sammy from Kong2 Paint, who I think is probably one of the best custom painters in Asia. He's young, he's passionate, he comes from a design background, and he really knows his shit. So we were one of the first companies to work with him in scale. So we offer 4 different paint schemes, And out of those paint schemes, you can choose the colours from our colour selection. And then we also can offer a full custom service if the customer wants to go really crazy and do something differently. But mostly we do the standard colours because we pre-mask the bike. So as you can see up on the wall here, we've got our different designs. So they're sitting at Kong 2 pre-masked. So that keeps the costs down and also speeds up the process. So I think we have one of the fastest turnarounds for custom paint as well. It's around about 4 weeks maximum from order to delivered custom paint. So we pride ourselves in giving you the ability to have a bike that's your own colours and your own, choose your own design at a price that I think is pretty reasonable for what you get. I'm Australian, and Australia has a very robust bike industry, and a lot of people ask me, why am I here in China? I was working as a young architect in Melbourne, and I was involved there in the design scene, and people say, well, why you just don't go back to Melbourne and start your brand there? There have been a few times when I thought, I might be better off if I was in Australia, because sometimes China's dealt a pretty hard card when it comes to its reputation and Chinese brands. But I was always looking to the long term, and I've been here now for almost 20 years, and I've seen how this place has changed, and more importantly, I've seen the rate of change. So when I first came here, I was working as an architect, and back then, the cities were pretty poorly designed. But now when I look at Chinese cities, there are some amazing things, innovations that are happening here, and they're some of the best, cities around. So I've always thought, well, if you apply that rate of change and that speed of change into the industry that you're working in, then if you're here for the long term, then that strategically is a good place to be. So having been here in China for such a long time, I've seen those crazy changes, and I knew that the same sort of thing could happen in the bike industry if I had the faith and if I had the perseverance to stay here and be involved in it. So Lehman, my partner, and I, we were innovators and some of the earliest people to do bicycle cycling culture related stuff here in China. So we started off the first bicycle NGO called Smarter Than Car, and then from there we started the first bike shop, bar and cafe in Asia. We did a vintage ride, we did a Beijing bicycle week, we did fixed gear races, we did all sorts of cultural things, and that was all around the idea of helping to grow Chinese cycling culture, because we knew that there was always going to be that strong potential for it to grow. And now if you look at modern Chinese cycling culture, it's phenomenal. Like the racing culture here is amazing, the roads are great, the places that you can ride, like we ride all the way to Everest Base Camp on amazing tarmac roads. The products that are coming out of China in the bike industry, the new ones that we've seen through your channel, are just amazing, and they're getting better every week. So I guess to answer that question, why China? Because I think the future, a lot of future innovation is going to be coming out of here, and this is the place that I want to be. I want to be close to it, and I want to be in the thick of the action, and I think it's going to come from this part of the world. So another thing that China is renowned for is its manufacturing. When I came, I had a stint where I was out of China for a couple of years in the Middle East, and then I came back. And when I came back, I decided I wanted to do something in the bike industry. And I went to Xiamen, I went to all the manufacturing hubs, and I saw what people were doing in carbon, and I was quite impressed. And at that stage, I was going to start my own carbon fiber brand, but I went to the Shanghai Bike Show and I met a South African guy called Mark Blewett, who had just launched Swift Carbon at that point, and he was doing exactly what I wanted to do. So I decided to kind of team up with him and start selling his bikes here in China. And that was a really interesting process, because we had a bike shop and sold another brand's bike that were made in China for I think 6 or 7 years, and through that we learned a lot about QC issues, about where the Chinese products were really at. And during that time I visited a lot of factories. Like there was a wheel factory that I went to visit, and And I remember going into their showroom where they're like, here's the best wheels we have on display. And I remember grabbing the spokes, and the spoke tension was so loose. And then the tension between both sides of the wheel was really off. And I'm like, I'm not even going to test ride these wheels because I don't think that they're safe. But now that same factory is producing phenomenal wheels. So during that time of selling Swift Carbon and going out and visiting different manufacturers, I've seen how they've just gone, their knowledge has just gone through the roof. And now we're at a point where a lot of the stuff that's made out of the good factories in China is absolutely world class. And so I knew that it was time to finally launch our own brand, and that's when we decided that we'd start SERK Titanium, which we started selling frames around 2018 was our first frames that went out the door. And the factory that we work with has been doing titanium for 30 years. The owner, or the chief guy at the factory, has a PhD in welding from the top university here in Beijing. And to get into that university, you have to be in the 0.0002% of Chinese brain power. So he's a very smart guy. And I actually think he was involved in welding or learning to weld with a French nuclear reactor. I think the Chinese sent a team to learn how to weld in France, and he was the one chosen by China. So his knowledge of titanium and welding is very, very strong. And the factory's been doing work for a number of years. And not only that, they also were involved in helping develop cycling culture here. So they had a team, they organised races, their staff are encouraged to ride bikes. The facility next door to the factory has an indoor BMX track in it, and all the local kids go there and hang out on the weekend and do all sorts of stuff. They're building a new pump track, so it's not like a typical kind of image of a Chinese factory, which is a sweatshop and where all the staff are being taken advantage of. It's very, very much different. The people behind it are passionate cyclists, and they really spending a lot of time and energy to build the product. So from that point of view, I'm really excited to be working here in China and proudly being saying that we're made in China, because I think in years to come that people will say, wow, actually made in China is pretty amazing. And I remember when I was a kid growing up, we didn't have, growing up in the 80s, there was a lot of Japanese products back then which weren't really thought of that highly, and now we think of Japanese as really high quality. So I think the same thing is happening with Chinese products. So yeah, the quality of the things that are coming out of factories and the quality of our bikes, I think is really high, and I'm really happy with that. I'm very excited about where it's going to go in the future. Another interesting thing about being here in China is that the Himalayas and Central Asia is essentially our backyard. So we've done lots of pioneering expeditions in Kyrgyzstan, in Tibet. Back in like 2018, we were the first ones to ride to Everest Base Camp on a road bike, on a brand new road there. And then we did an Everesting at Everest together with Cycling Tips in 2018. And we did some of the first gravel riding in Central Asia, in Kyrgyzstan. So frontier cycling is a big part of our brand ethos. So we love to go out and do adventures, and that's really where we test our bikes. And each of our bikes has been really developed around the different types of experiences and trips that we run in those parts of the world. So for us, it's really important that we do real world testing. So, for instance, if you've got a carbon rim and it's tubeless compatible, and you're on a 4,500 meter climb, you're at 4,500 meters, can you pop the tire onto the rim with a hand pump? And the answer to that is I can tell you which brands you definitely can't do that with. You can with ours. But why is that important? Because if you're out there on the frontiers and there's a storm coming in and you don't have enough clothes on, you can get into some serious trouble. So it's important that all the components of the bike work properly, that they're properly made, that they're not going to fail on you, and that they're properly tested in these kind of extreme conditions. Because that's what we're telling people to do with our bikes. We're like, go out, take your bike to the middle of buttfuck nowhere, strap some bags on it and have a real adventure, because that's what really gets us going and that's what we think a lot of our customers are interested in. So you got, on the one hand, we're really close here to the factories and we have great relationships with them, but then we're only always a couple of hours away from the frontiers and places where you can't get a new front through axle if it breaks, or if your seat clamp bolt snaps, you're going to be in trouble, or if you can't seat the tyre, you'll have an issue. So we use the frontiers as our testing ground, and also it's what inspires us to do what we're doing with the brand. I wasn't always into frontier cycling. Like, I come from a racing background. I started racing, I think, when I was 15 in Australia, and back then, cycling wasn't that popular. It was quite a niche sport, but I was super into cycling. And all through my teens and early 20s, I was always into racing bikes. I mean, you can see up on the roof here some of the bikes that I dreamed about having as a kid that I've now been able to kind of collect. So then I was a weight weenie, concentrated on everything to do with speed and performance enhancing aspects of the bike and training. And when I did that adventure on the titanium bike, it all sort of started to shift for me, because I built that first gravel bike up with Dura Ace because I wanted it to be light. A lot of people, when they do their first gravel bike and they come from a roadie background, they're counting every gram. And then all of a sudden I strapped on like 15 kilograms of bags, and I'm like, well, now it's a big problem because I don't want to scratch that Dura Ace crank on the road. I should have just put 105 in there because I would have enjoyed the adventure more. But anyway, that's a side note. So I packed up those bags and I just I started riding in remote Sichuan and looking at my bike computer, but just looking at the route. I wasn't looking at my numbers. I wasn't looking at my heart rate. And we just rode. It was me and two other friends, and we just rode until it was dark or until we found a place to sleep, and then just camped for the night. And that really helped me kind of refocus my cycling. It gave me a new lease on life of cycling. It wasn't so much about the watts and all the training. It was about discovery and about adventure, and using the bicycle as a vehicle to go explore places that you might not have otherwise known about. And doing it from the seat of your bike is absolutely the best way to do it, because you can smell, you can see, you can talk to people. You've got the added elements like the rain and the sun to take into account. There's a lot of things that you really need to think about, and that adds to the adventure. It's really raw and rough. So at that stage, I kind of became less and less interested in racing and more interested in adventure. And then I also started to change what I really needed for the bike. So it was less about weight, more about durability. Comfort was also more important, and that's where titanium comes into it. And then the next stage of that was thinking about, how long is this bike going to really last? Because I'd been racing and I'd had a couple of crashes, and one season I went through 3 carbon frames, and I just saw those frames sitting there against the wall, thinking what an absolute waste of material, because it was so fragile and easy to break. So the good thing about titanium is that it's pretty hard to break, and it's also really reusable. So we actually have a program with a team in Africa called the Masaka Cycling Club, and we allow our customers to essentially trade their frame in. So you can bring your old rim brake titanium frame in, and then we get out the steel wool and we polish it, and we can bring it back to looking just like new. And because titanium also has a really long fatigue life, even a frame after 40, 50,000 kilometers still has got lots and lots of years of life left in it. You know, unlike aluminium and unlike carbon that has a shorter fatigue life. So we essentially refurbish those frames and then we send them to Africa, and then the African team are racing on them and giving them a new lease on life. And we hope that after they're finished, that they'll give them to another group of people, and maybe, you know, still in 20 or 30 years' time, our bikes are going to be ridden. So titanium is a material that really lasts long and gives the ability for the bike to have a really long life. And for us, that's important as consumers having those bikes, but also as a brand that we take responsibility that we make bikes that are going to last for a long time. And now we're trying to develop a program to continuously keep our bikes in use. So my aim as a brand owner is not to sell the most number of bikes, but to produce the bikes that have the most number of kilometers on them. So that's why we developed this system with Masaka, where the clients can come in, give us back their old frame, get a new one, we send it off to Africa and it gets reused, and then we want to have it reused again and again, so that we think about the number of kilometers per bit of titanium that we take out of the ground, because that's what's really important about about being sustainable. It's not just about using a nice cardboard box, but getting the most use out of the material that you're responsible for putting on this planet. So that's our kind of aim, and that's one of the reasons why titanium is really important to us and the material of choice. Yes, so there's not that many SERKs out there on the roads. I think it's always nice when we get an email from the first customer in Canada or Indonesia who says, "Oh, I think I'm the first SERK owner in that country." But we're a small brand, we're boutique, and we have a kind of dedicated group of people who follow the brand. And a lot of them have had those frontier experiences with us. We've had people like Andy Van Bergen, who's the founder of Everesting. He's done many trips with us and he has a SERK bike. We have Ji Chung, who was the first Chinese pro to finish all 3 Grand Tours. And another one of the riders on our bike is the head of DT Swiss in Asia. And he kind of has a choice of pretty much any bike he wants, but he decided for his adventure bike that he wanted to have a SERK bike, because he really believed in what we're doing as a brand. And again, he wanted a reliable titanium bike, so we ticked all those boxes. You too can be part of the crew by getting involved, by getting a SERK bike. And we're a very small team here. I mean, you can see us all here. We're very personable, and we respond to emails and questions. It's usually me or one of the others. We're always super excited to see someone get on one of our bikes and send us photos from wherever they are. Design is really important to me. Like, I grew up in a family, my mum was a fashion designer, my dad was an engineer. So I've always been exposed to both the engineering side and the design side. And I studied architecture and I practice as an architect. So I've always been a big fan of design. So in our bikes, there's a lot of work that goes on in the small detailing of the design. And we also really think really hard about the proportions of the bike. I almost use sort of architectural design procedures to come up with the angles and the shapes and the balance of the bike. And I have a lot of customers who say, "Oh, your bikes are really beautiful in their simplicity," and that's because we do appreciate simplicity, and we spend a lot of time tweaking everything to get it just right. So there's no logo on the down tube. There's only a small logo on the fork. There are small little details that maybe, Joe, you've even noticed as you've pulled the bike apart. You'll see there's something new every time. And in terms of design inspiration, like, I grew up in the 80s and 90s, and I was really into cycling back then. So I've always loved the bright and big sort of teams. Like Greg LeMond was my hero growing up. So we tend to go for, in terms of paint jobs, more bright and bold, but still simple. And yeah, I have a really nice collection of vintage bikes that I enjoy staring at every day from my desk. So the kind of history of cycling and cycling brands, always I draw heavily on that in our designs. So yeah, design is a really a big part of what we do, and it's one of the things that really excites me about, moving from architecture, where I was before, back into a brand and into design. I bring all of that experience from my architectural design career and my racing into the bikes, and I feel incredibly lucky and privileged to be able to do that. But I wake up every morning excited to be dealing with bikes every day. It's great.
So you can choose any bike, your own or any of these, and any road in the world. What is your last ride? What bike and what road?
Okay, that's a good question. I think I would choose one of the SERK bikes, probably the A30, because that's the bike that I feel the most comfortable on. It's got just enough zip, and I really love descending on that bike. And I'd choose the road that I did my Everesting on. I did an Everesting here in Beijing many years ago, and if you've ever done an Everesting, you know that by the time you finish the Everesting, you can do the descent with your eyes closed. So you know every single bump, every single little curve and angle on those roads. And so by the end of your Everesting, you are smashing the descent. So that's one of the best things about doing an Everesting. And that feeling of being on a descent that you're really familiar with a bike that you designed is, if that was my last ride on Earth, I'd be very, very happy with that. Yeah, so if you're visiting Beijing, definitely come in to our office here in central Beijing. You're welcome to pop your head in and say hello. We have rental bikes here, so you can go for a ride. We have a house up in the mountains which you can stay at. And Beijing is phenomenal for cycling, which I'm sure you'll find out in the next couple of days. We also have, I think, dealers now in 8 or 9 countries, and we are really big on supporting small dealers. So if you're interested to check out a SERK bike and you're not here in China, give us a yell, and hopefully there's a dealer somewhere near you that we can put you in touch with. Or if you have a favourite bike shop and you're interested to get them selling SERK, we'll also be happy to set them up and get them going. And otherwise, you can follow us on social media, SERK Titanium on Instagram, SERK also on Xiaohongshu Chinese social media. And hopefully we'll get to see more people enjoying SERK adventures around the world.
So yeah, that's what we got up to. That's Shannon's thoughts on all things Chinese bike industry and stuff. Like I say, SERK make great bikes. I think I'll be posting my final review of this soon. I've got about a year on it now, so more than enough to say what I think about it. Spoiler alert, I really like it. I wouldn't race it as a crit bike or anything, but as an everyday, nice, comfortable bike doing zone 2 rides. Looks nice at the coffee shop. It'll last you forever. I don't think there's many better choices, especially for the money. So yeah, I'll have more content on SERK coming soon, so subscribe so you don't miss that. And as always, China Cycling out.